I read a book recently. In one of my drafts, I call it wonderful, but I'm not sure that's the right adjective to describe it. It's called The Vanishing Church, and it's by a political scientist and American Baptist pastor named Ryan Burge. And he's going to be speaking over at Peachtree Christian if you want to know more information on him. But basically, the book says this: the mainline church, of which we are a part, is in steep decline. While evangelical congregations, Catholics, are holding somewhat steady, the PCUSA alone has declined about 68% since 1987, from 3.8 million to just over 1 now. Mainline Protestants have shrunk from nearly 30% of Americans in 1972 to about 9% today, and only 2% of Americans aged 18 to 40 identify as members of a mainline denomination. 2%. So Burge's core argument is that American religion has become an all or none proposition. The mainline is being squeezed out of existence. The group that is growing as the mainline squeezes, now representing over 25% of Americans, is the nuns. And this group exists almost entirely at the expense of mainline Protestants. The people who left mainline churches, they mostly didn't go evangelical. They went to none. So Ryan Burge, who does his work in sociology and religion, he breaks this all down into beautiful graphs, and he blocks out who the nuns really are. He says you've got 3 categories. One, you've got atheists, so folks who actively assert there is no God. But then you have these 2 other categories. You have agnostics, who hold that God's existence is unknown or unknowable. And then you have nothing in particular. By far the largest subgroup. These are not people who have reasoned their way out of faith. They are simply people for whom religion is irrelevant. They didn't leave dramatically, they just stopped. Burge's formula is this: if you put 5 nuns in a room, 1 is an atheist, 1 is agnostic, and 3 are nothing in particular. The nothing in particular nun is not that village atheist of popular imagination. They are often spiritually open, morally serious, and not hostile to religion. They just don't feel any need to wrestle with God. Which brings us to our passage for today. I listened to a sermon on this passage by Kim Wagner, who's a preaching professor at Princeton. It was on day 1, the Protestant Radio Hour, and it offered the typical traditional interpretation of our passage. It's a good sermon, don't get me wrong. In it, she speaks of a man who endured sudden and significant tragedy, deaths that were terrible, and that made his experience of God really no longer fit with his experiences at church. So when his wife died and then his daughter died soon after that, he was done. He walked out the door. Instead of trying to squeeze the square peg of his experience into the round hole of his ideas and the church's ideas about God, he backed out of church for a time. But the pastor was happy to report he went on wrestling with God. And the high point comes when he does return to worship. Changed by the experience of his distance and discernment, he had enough of new understanding of God to try his hand again at faith. And the story, and we've heard this before, he is Jacob, a hip bone out of joint, but a man who has wrestled with God long enough to receive God's blessing. It is a beautiful sermon. It is one we have all heard before. And to be fair to most of us sitting here, it's a story that still makes sense. We who show up in these pews on Sunday morning are wrestling. And yet, it does not describe at all the many, many people we know who tap out way before anything of significance happens to them. In other words, the standard translation for this pericope on Jacob just no longer fits because 25% of our population no longer cares to wrestle with any God. Y'all probably don't know this, but the basement of my home sees wrestling matches most days. We have mats. We have headgear. We have wrestling shoes. We have a singlet framed and hanging on the wall from my husband's glory days as a wrestler. And now my son is getting into it, and I watched him last night, and man, that kid is strong. I'm the cheerleader. They call me down to watch. And to be honest, I don't really get wrestling. I'm working on the point system, the starting positions, how it is exactly that you actually win. But I do know enough now after watching wrestling to say it's not what you might think. Sure, we might know it takes some brute strength, but the main thing with wrestling, it's very strategic. This hand goes here, then turns to this degree, then pulls, so your opposite shoulder moves under and you take the weight there. Then your feet get to move like 2 inches, and now you can take them down. Maybe you are like me at first. You're watching a wrestling match and you think, there's not much going on. Like, why aren't they moving? Like, why are they so sweaty? And what? It takes 15 seconds to like lift a knee? But then my son demonstrated a chokehold. He didn't hurt me. It was for fun. But let me just tell you, if your neck is under strong biceps, placed precisely to put you on your back, you are using all your strength to survive. Wrestling, it's this chess match on the mat, your body, a symphony of instruments, muscles, tendons, joints, breath. If you are trained, you are moving toward a particular goal, a positive performance through a considered strategy. If you are not trained, you are just trying to survive. And so we have Jacob who wrestles the divine. Jacob, at first, you might think of him, a patriarch from the Hebrew Bible, as a pious man of God who had been close to God all of his life. But actually, he was wild. He was a trickster. And from the very beginning, he was making strategic moves to get ahead. And I mean, from the beginning. The story goes that in the womb, he made a move on his brother and came out gripping his heel. That's how he got his name, Jacob. It means heel grabber. And then he partnered with his mother to steal his brother's birthright from his blind and dying father. He got dressed up in a goat skin to feel as rough as his brother's hairy body, so that when his father would be convinced when he reached out to touch him for the blessing. Well, wrestling with people like this has consequences, and his brother Esau vowed that he would kill Jacob. And Jacob got tricked too. His father-in-law substituted the one daughter that Jacob loved, the beloved one, for the other daughter that he had no interest in, slipped her right into the marriage bed. And it forced Jacob to work more years. And he put him in a flock, the father-in-law, of less valued speckled sheep. And when Jacob got tricky, using breeding practices to have sheep that appeared more white, less spotty, when he did his work and eventually married his beloved, well, the father-in-law got mad and they were eventually forced to flee again. So when we meet Jacob in the desert, we are not meeting a man with life left to live. He has been working. He has been tricking. He has been studying. He has been moving strategically. It turns out that at this desert visit, the reason he sends his family on is that they are on their way to be reunited with his brother Esau, the one that said he would kill him, because Jacob tricked him multiple times. It had been 20 years. And I can just bet that Jacob sat there by himself on the side of the river to cook up some tricks, to get some ideas under his sleeve for this encounter with his brother. He who wrestled with people constantly would have no doubt been in training for this meeting with his brother. And then night falls on the river, and an angel appears, a visitor come to wrestle him. Jacob could have demurred. He probably could have flopped. He might have rolled over and said, "This is only a dream. I've got what I need." But not Jacob. Of course he didn't. He harnessed all his energy. The strategies he used to make his way in a complicated world, the worries he had about meeting with his brother, the angst he held from this reputation he had built about these past decisions that trailed him, the brokenness of many of his relationships. He took that all and he threw it on the mat with God. All night, it said. Do you know wrestling matches are usually like 6 minutes? All night, he locked in. All night, he wrestled with the angel of God, and Jacob wrestled so intensely that God wanted out. God broke Jacob's hip in order to remove himself from the situation. Jacob won the match. The angel of God lost to Jacob, but before Jacob let him go, he asked for a blessing, and he received one. Jacob, whose name had been heel grabber, read deceiver, read fighter, read trickster, his name was now Israel. Israel means God fights. Israel means God strives. Israel means the emphasis on the struggle is with God. The next part of the passage, we see Jacob waking up, limping, making his way across the river to see Esau. And no game is played between these brothers. They do not grapple with each other. The fighting is done. Scripture tells us that Esau runs to meet Jacob, embraces him, throws his arms around his neck and kisses him, and both of them weep together. After 20 years, the brother who had sworn to kill him comes to him with love, and the one who has given all his angst to God is finally ready to receive it. Here's the thing. It is much, 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 much easier to call other people on the mat than to go grappling with God. We do it a lot. We do it with people we don't like. We do it with people we think differently from. We do it with people in our families. We do it till it is overdone. And there is no great blessing. There is no invitation to a new life. There's no glorious understanding found in tangling with mortals. There's not. What are you scared of? Go on. Get God on the mat. God is ready to rumble. Give God all you've got. The real stuff. The real stuff. I read a book recently by George Saunders. He wrote Lincoln and the Bardo. He has another book now called Vigil, and it takes up the same topic of afterlife. And he calls people when they die inevitable outcomes. All that they are, all that they've done for good, for ill, inevitable outcomes. Very, very Calvinist of him, we Presbyterians might think. And yet the divine, the elevated in this story offers each inevitable outcome unbelievable grace. That's a good wrestling question. God, on the mat, why did you create so many annoying people, even terrible people? And then why are we still called to love them? Whew, that'd take you all night. I would also offer up, why'd you invent teenagers? Or menopause? Or aging? We can wrestle on that one. And then the church. Why is the church so tricky? Why can't we be everything to all people? Why does it decline? Why does it get involved in violence all the time? Or what about, why do I struggle? Why do I struggle to believe? Why do I feel there is no blessing for me? Why did you take that person away from me? Wrestle with God. Wrestle with God. And look, it takes training. You don't just get on the mat and flop around. I mean, you can, but it takes training. It takes practice. It takes strategic moves. It takes prayer. It takes people. But don't give up. Don't walk away from that mat until God has given you a new name. And not just any new name, but one that reminds you to keep putting in the hours for your encounters with the Almighty that will come. The name that reminds you to keep prepping for the place where you will look on God and see God face to face. And the one where Scripture tells us you will prevail, maybe with a little limp, but definitely with victory. To God be the glory, time without end.